Hi everyone, thank you again for dropping in for another episode of Hannon Inside Out. My name is Kaylee and I'm an outreach student assistant. I'll be your host today. Today we'll be speaking with Jessica Guardado, our wonderful special collections assistant. Hi Jessica, how are you doing today?
Hi, Kaylee. How are you? Hi, everyone.
Okay, let's get started with our questions for today. First, how do people typically react when you say you're a librarian?
So I get two questions actually when I tell them I work at a library. The first one is if I am a librarian, which I respond to no. A lot of people don't know that if you work at a library doesn't mean you're a librarian, but they don't know that you actually have to go to school for that, and it involves a lot of work, and you have to get your master's and all that. Um, the second thing people ask me is if I check in and check out books all day because they have this idea that that's all we do at a library, which we don't. I love to explain to them how a library works and how it's separated in departments. And one of the departments I work for is archives and special collections. And the best way I describe our department is if they could imagine going to a museum and you're looking at an object, you either see it at a distance or you see it inside a glass case. And if you come to our department, it's completely opposite to that. You're actually coming in here to handle the materials, to actually see them closer, and actually get to feel the material. So it's very different than a museum, but we do hold these rare, amazing treasures. So that's how I explain our department to people.
Yeah, you have a lot of amazing
Yes,
exhibits to look at.
many treasures.
Yeah. Could you tell us about your job at the library?
So I am the assistant to the Department of Archives and Special Collections, of course, but I also am the student supervisor. One of my main responsibilities is managing the reading room. So to come into our department, we do have two spaces actually. We have the gallery, which is a museum like view, and then we have the reading room space. And for that space, you actually need to schedule an appointment. Everyone is welcome. You just need to schedule an appointment. But I and the students that I train, we make sure that when researchers come in, their materials are ready. If they have any questions, we're there to help them. Um, and we also train them to or teach them to handle our materials with care. Most of our materials are fragile, so we want to make sure that everyone's handling these materials with care. If it's a student or myself, we're monitoring the reading room with our materials. Besides that, I also, as I mentioned, the gallery, I also work with curators. Designing the exhibit. So it changes three times for spring, summer, and fall. And one of my favorite things is actually designing that. We have this huge wall design, and it's one of my favorite things to do. It's working with the students as well, of course, to design. What's going to go up, what colors they're going to be the wall. So yeah, that's pretty much what I consider. I think I do. Yeah,
Do you have any favorite items from the collection?
that's such a hard question, Kaylee. Um, one of my favorite I do have many, but one of my favorite collections is the postcard collection. Um, back then we didn't have phones, we didn't have cameras, so this is how people when they visited a place, this is how people took photos, and instead of us Instagramming where we're at, this is how people would also reach out to their loved ones and say like, hey, this is where I'm. So it's really fun to look at the postcard collection. I can get lost in there for hours in these boxes because for example, the LA postcards, the city has changed so much throughout the years, so it's amazing to see how LA used to look in the 1800s. It's changed so much. So one of my one of my favorite ones.
I remember you saying that people didn't put addresses on the back of their postcards.
No, some of the postcards did not. So the earlier postcards, they don't have an address. They would just say, I've come across a couple of postcards where they would say, the blue house in the city. And I guess, the cities weren't as big, it wasn't as populated as it is now. So, it was easier to find people So they didn't have addresses. I'm assuming, the post office just knew, that person. Everyone knew each other, and they would just be like, I know who that person is. And they would just give them their postcard.
I guess maybe it helps to have like a neon house to be the only neon house in the block, and it'd be easy to find you like that.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. What is it like to be inside the vault? Do things require special storage and handling?
Yes, all our materials do require handling, special care. The vault is cold, very cold. It has a set temperature, a control temperature, and a humidity as well. We control both because we want to make sure that our materials don't start growing mold, for example, or you can imagine what heat can do to these rare materials. And The other thing is that we put some of the materials are actually in acid-free folders or acid-free boxes. So everything is handled with care. We Some people, when they think of archives and special collections, they think of the white gloves. And we actually don't use the white gloves anymore. We use nitrile gloves now.
Mm.
I believe they're nitrile. um, and We don't use it for everything, of course. So the things we do use gloves, for example, would be photographs or negatives or objects, physical objects. But we don't want to use that for documents or rare books.
Mm.
Um, but um, but everything is handled with care, but differently. So, but in everyone that comes in, we teach everyone. So,
Mm.
in case any, when you come in, Kaylee, one day, know that you will be trained in how to handle material.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yes.
Could you explain a little bit why you don't use, why you use different gloves when handling the objects?
Yeah, so we have oil in our hands that can actually damage the object. So if, for example, if you've ever hold a photograph with your hands, our hands do get a little bit sweaty. We just can't tell sometimes, and you'll see marks, or when you're handling your phone, for example, you'll see your prints. So that could be a little bit of a damage to the material. Um, I'm not like a full expert, but that's what we're trying to prevent and compare. So that's why the gloves, and I think, and with rare books or documents, we can't use gloves. It'll be more difficult for you to handle a
Mm.
paper if you're wearing gloves. It's more difficult to handle that. You can actually end up making more damage to the material, hurting the material. So,
That's interesting, and it helps to keep it nice and pristine for the next
yes,
generation as
nice
well.
and pristine, and this is how, all of these steps that we take, it's to make sure that the next person that's going to come in gets the opportunity to look at, the next generation, you can say, gets the opportunity to look at. So this is the reason why we want to make sure that we take care of all of our materials. All our materials are our children. They're fragile.
Mhm. And you want to show off all of your children to the world.
Yes. Of course.
Okay, next question would be, how have you adapted your job to the online environment?
Oh, one of my main things that I've mentioned is handling the reading room with researchers and the student employees, of course. It's so different now because the student employees, for example, are now working online. They're working remotely, and instead of researchers actually getting the opportunity to come in person and look at these materials themselves, I'm actually their eyes. So
Mm.
we do have an online form, and they provide us much detail as possible what they're looking for. Some of the researchers, might be publishing a book and they have a deadline, and they need to know, what photos we might have, and I'm their eyes. I try my best to help them as much as I can. And I think that's the way that things have changed. Instead of me giving out the boxes and them doing the research, I've become their eyes in some way of making sure that we're still helping, the researchers out there. So I'm like, we're still here. It's just changed a little bit.
Has it been like a difficult transition or?
uh, you know, at first it probably was, just because we do have many collections, of course, but um, I think as weeks started passing by, it became easier. And I honestly, back then I would learn from the researchers what they were finding when you're sitting at the front desk with them. And now, I'm learning all these new things looking at these collections, and it's really fun, being a researcher. You learn so much.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Sounds like a really awesome kind of collaborative process.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. Do you have any messages for the audience before we conclude?
Well, I hope in the future when everything goes back to normal, everyone would come and visit our department, Archives and Special Collections, come and visit our gallery, schedule an appointment to look
Mhm.
at our materials. We have amazing materials, and I also recommend actually we do have the LMU the digital collections website. We do have some online collections. For example, you can actually see historical photographs of the university's campus
Mm.
when it was, like the Sacred Heart Chapel being built and things like that. If you can't see it here for now, I highly recommend you going also online to look at some of these amazing photographs that we have and other collections that we have out there. And we miss you, and we hope very soon to see you all back at the library.
And you can see postcards in the digital collection.
Yes, the postcard collection's also there, the Southern California postcard. Yes. Very cool postcard collection in there too.
The colors are always so pretty. I'm like, wow, it's so pretty to look at.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for joining us today. I can't wait till we're all back in the library and I can come and see some of the items in the collection. And thank you for taking the time to speak with us. And thank you to everyone who dropped in to listen. And I hope you all have an amazing week.
Bye, everyone. Thank you, Kaylee.
Bye.